It is the season for sharing and giving. It is the season for sharing and giving. Bam. 2025, fourth quarter, December, the U.S. It's cold. It's really cold. But more than that, there's chaos among chaos. There's chaos in the government. There's chaos in our social support systems. There's chaos everywhere. Inflation, the fight to control inflation has cooled down. We still have inflation. Price of gas is down, but certainly the price of food is up. And guess what? Everybody eats. Everybody drinks. The price of food is a real thing. We have food insecurity like we've never had before. We've had demands upon our social organizations like food shelves, food banks, and the like to help mediate that. And people are stepping up. There's conversations about fraud, and fraud is real, and it's getting in the way of real dialogues. For example, the SNAP program, which was suspended during our latest government shutdown, now looks like it's coming back online, but you're going to have to register. Now that's interesting. You take a homeless, starving, underfed person, and we get him to register for his SNAP benefits. Wow, that makes a lot of sense. And you know there's a lot of fraud with those people. That's why they're homeless, and that's why they're not nourished. But there is hope. And there is hope for lots of organizations that are out there that have stood the test of time. And one of the bright lights is the Salvation Army. Some people call it the Sally. Some call it whatever you want to call it. And for most of us, the picture of the Salvation Army is the red kettle. You know, this kind of irritating thing we see when we go out shopping. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I left it. But this is an organization going back to 1865 that has done good work and continues to do good work into the future. Now, again, most of us see this as the symbol of the Salvation Army. But how about its fight to handle homelessness? How about its fight to handle food problems? How about its fight to handle health problems, education, women's health, and all those things? Senior care, child care. Those are things that we just don't see, but are an integral part of the Salvation Army. I had the privilege of getting to know the Salvation Army some years ago. I was in the process of distributing some money from an estate, and one of which was a check to the Salvation Army. Now, first of all, you have to find out, where do you take this check? You just take it down, put it in the kettle? No. So I had arranged to meet some Salvation Army people in South St. Paul in a warehouse that was an old 3M equipment thing. Nothing fancy at all. And I walked in and I handed them a check and I started to leave. He says, "Where are you going?" I said, "I just came here to give you a check. We've got to show you around town. We got to show you what your money is buying." So I got in the backseat of an old Chevrolet and we drove around the east side of St. Paul, places I had never, ever been before, to see various food shelf and other supporting things. That was my first real introduction to the Army. The last part was that we visited a building that was over by Fairgrounds. And I used to drive by that on the school bus when I was in high school, best in the dark ages. And that was a home for unwed mothers. I remember that. But that day they took me past that place, which was some 30 years later. It was a rehab house for drug and other things. So it's a sustaining organization. Now, that being said, what can we do to help the Army? This is the season of sharing and giving. Well, you can certainly put money in the kettle. As a general rule, for every hour that it is manned, and this is an opportunity to volunteer, that kettle will bring you almost $100 an hour. Now, Steve and I were calculating how many available hours are there in Rochester in the going season. Looks to me like their number is about 8,000 hours. So that's money that could go directly in there. Now, what are other things we can do? We can volunteer to do other things. We can drive. We can do some other support issues. We can count. We can go down and serve food down at the Army on special occasions. There are all sorts of opportunities. But bottom line is support this needs support. Now, I want to tell you 2 stories about going. And going is a great thing because it fulfills a need. If you think that's good, you're helping others. And as an afterthought, it's tax deductible. We were picking up kettles one night on 37th Street in the IB, one over across from the septic system. And there was a parent in there with 5 children playing instruments, all of different ages and abilities. And to say that the music was challenged would be an understatement. But people were standing in line to put money in the kettle because they recognize the enormity of the moment. That was a moment I'll never forget. But there's one other one that comes to mind, and it took back probably 10 years ago over at TJ Maxx. In one of his Saturday night sessions, there was a husband and wife combination who would come in, and she was bedridden. And they would get her bed out of the van. And they would come in, and she would ring for a couple of hours. Now, I think that season, and Steve probably knows that individual. Remember that? Maybe it was before your time. She and her husband rang for probably 80 to 100 hours that year. That's an incredible thing. Did she make a difference? I'm sure. She helped fill that kettle, but probably made a difference for her. So, support the Army. Support whatever else you want to support. Do it because they need it. It helps others. And it makes you feel good. There's nothing wrong with that.